Hey kids, Mr. Fly here, hope you're well. Now I'm a super lucky chap at the moment because in my garage I've got not one but two Panigales, as you can see. I've got my own 899 and I've got the absolutely splendid V4S that I've got on long-term loan from Ducati. Absolutely thrilled to have two Panigales here. Who would have ever thought it, eh? When these bikes came out in 2014, I thought, well, not this one, but the Panigale generally, I thought they were the most beautiful looking bike ever. Now, the bike has changed a bit between the original looking Panigale and the new one. This video is very much an anoraks guide, all about just the difference in looks. So if you're a bit of an anorak for Panigales like myself, you might want to stay tuned. Okay, so just in case you're wondering what an anorak is, I know that last time I made any sort of video that had the word anorak in the title, I had a few of our American cousins saying that they had to look up what an anorak is. Well, actually, an anorak is a type of waterproof jacket here in the UK. It's the sort of jacket that train spotters might wear when they're on the end of a train station platform taking notes of train numbers. So we tend to use the word anorak to mean anybody who's sadly obsessive about something. And I'm a bit sadly obsessive about the Panigale because, as I said in the intro, I absolutely love this bike. And when the bike first came out, I just thought, I've got to have one of those machines. They look, to my eyes, absolutely beautiful. I think they're the best looking motorcycle ever made. I still think that. But they have changed somewhat over the years, as I hinted. Now, there's loads of videos about the Panigale V4S around tracks and the fact that it's a hooligan bike and, you know, it's the fastest thing you can buy, 214 bhp, absolutely laden with electronics. There's not much more I can add to that. But there's not an awful lot of anoraky stuff that says, well, if you're just a chap like me that likes the looks of these things, how have things changed over the years? Now, the way that I can actually do this is I can show you my Panigale 899 just here. Now, this Panigale is exactly the same shape as the original machine that came out in the 1199 format back in 2014. These have been around for about 4 years now. So this is the original shape of the Panigale. It's quite trim. It's quite, well, it's not quite as angular as the new bike, which we'll look at in a minute. But here we go. So that's the sort of the front end of it. I still think it looks mean as anything. And then here's the new bike. Again, all sorts of changes. This is a lot more angular. If I move the camera around, here we go. The front lights, for example, are much more angular here than on the original bike. So if we look, so this is the V4S, the current Panigale, and this is the original Panigale. So quite a different opening here, just a little bit more smooth lines here, I think. Anyway, so that's the sort of inane fact that I'm going to give you. We're going to look over these two bikes in a little bit of detail and just look at how the bike has changed. Because when you look at the V4S and you casually look at the original Panigale, they look kind of similar. But actually, when you look close up, there's very, very little about the two bikes that remains the same. So stick around and stay tuned if you're an anorak like me and you want to see the difference between the two bikes. Right, before we get into more nitty-gritty, I know what people are going to be saying. I'm not comparing like with like. I absolutely know that. I'm just an ordinary Joe. I can't have an 1199, the original flagship Panigale, together with the V4S in the garage at the same time. I have to go with the materials I've got. So the 899 is my bike. It's the same shape, as I say, as the original one, but of course there are key differences. So yeah, so lay off those comments. I know I'm not comparing like with like. This is just a you know, a look at the aesthetic differences between the original bikes. So, for example, on the 899, which is the sort of poor man's Panigale, if you like, it hasn't got a single-sided swing arm. Of course, it's got you know, a normal conventional swing arm. Whereas on the V4, just like the original 1199, it's got a single-sided swing arm. There are other huge differences as well. Things like the V4 having the incredible new Brembo brakes that were designed just for the V4, milled out of a single bit of billet, absolutely beautiful, made for that machine. Whereas on, again, the poor man's Panigale, the 899, here we go. Yes, I've got lovely Brembo brakes, but these are just, I think, I can't remember what these are, M38, something like that. These are fairly standard Brembo brakes, not dissimilar, in fact, to the ones I've got on my GS. So, yeah, and the suspension is different. Obviously, the engine is completely different. All those things taken as read. I'm purely looking at the form factor of the overall bike here. So, okay, so we've already talked about the front end. I'm not sure which of these Panigales I like the looks the best. It's not a slam dunk that the V4S is the better looking bike, I don't think. I actually still think the original Panigale looks pretty cute. That front end that we looked at just now, I think possibly the original Panigale still has it. All right, let's look at some more details. Okay, next up, let's look at the main fairing area then, this whole area here. What are the changes here? Well, the obvious thing that strikes me, again, it looks like a Panigale, but there's quite a different setup here. Look at this sort of cutout arrangement here. Again, of course, they've had to do this because it's a different frame, a different engine that's housed. So we've got a completely different cutout here. And then also the fairing itself goes up and sort of joins on to the fuel tank at this point. If we now contrast that with the original bike, So here we go, the original Panigale. None of that cutout, just a straightforward flat fairing. And the fairing usually doesn't go and join the fuel tank. It actually is a separate piece here that's joined on. So quite a different look there. In fact, when you look at the two together, completely different. I don't know if you can see both if the camera's wide angle enough, but a completely different fairing actually. As I said before, there's very little about these two bikes that's actually the same. All right, the next big change, I think you really notice when you're actually on the bike. Let me show you that. Okay, here we are. It's the fuel tank. Again, a completely different shape on the new V4. Again, I don't know which I prefer, whether I prefer the old or the new, but we've got this, again, this different panel here on the top that's attached to that bit of fairing that we just talked about. And the whole fuel tank itself is a different shape. It feels wider when you're riding it. Not to mention, the Ducati Performance tank pad is quite different. Let's go and look at the original in comparison. Okay, here we are. Here's the original Panigale's tank. As you can see, it doesn't have that bit joined on the front. It's just a straightforward tank. And the Panigale Performance tank pad is a more simple design. Again, not sure which I prefer. So let's just give you a quick look. It's that versus that. I think maybe the new V4's got it. Just a bit meaner, I think. All right, what else then? Let's look at the back end of the bikes. Okay, here we are down the back end of the bikes, and they are both beautiful bikes at the rear end. So here's the original Panigale rear end. See, I think it looks great with I love the way you can see through here, and it reminds me of sort of a shark's nose, this here. I think that looks fantastic. All right, let's go and look at the new V4. Here we go. Now, you've got to ignore the fact that it's got this hideous tail tied on here. Let's just look at the back. So a completely different design, much bigger holes here that you can see through. Still got a bit of shark nose about it, but a completely different tail end again. So let's do a quick comparison. So there's that tail end. Oh, by the way, the angle here as well is much steeper. There's the tail end on the new one. Here's the tail end on the original. And I guess as well, just for maybe viewers abroad that are looking at the back end on the new one, thinking, what on earth is this monstrosity poking out here? That is it's not a tail tidy, that's the original number plate piece that comes with the Panigale. There's a bizarre rule, it might be a European rule, it might be a UK rule, I don't know which, that says that when a bike rolls out of a dealership as a brand new machine, you have to have the number plate aft of the tyre. That's why so many new bikes have this ridiculous plastic monstrosity that brings the number plate back. What everybody does is fits one of these, which is a tail tidy, which just neatens up the whole back end. The particular tail tidy I've got on my 899 is actually a Ducati Performance one, so it's carbon, as you can see, and it's got these lovely LED indicators as well. It just makes the whole thing look so much neater when you compare it to what comes OEM on the new one. It's got these rather agricultural looking indicators and this hideous bit of plastic, but my guess is if you can afford to buy one of these, you can afford to buy a Ducati Performance tail tidy and get it slapped on forthwith. Okay, next up, something that I've noticed is more of a similarity actually than a difference, and that is the top yoke on the bike. Here we go. This is the original top yoke. We can see it's this lovely bit of billet aluminium that's been machined. I think it looks absolutely beautiful, and it's one of the things that makes this bike stand out, I think, when you compare it against things like the Suzuki GSXR, which just has plate steel top yoke, if I remember rightly, but it looks absolutely beautiful. And I'm pleased to say on the new bike they've kept this sort of look, but it's slightly different. Let me whip you over there now to the new bike. So remember what that looks like. Here we go, on the new bike, you've again got a lovely machined piece of aluminium billet. Of course, it being a top spec bike, this has got the fancy auto suspension on here as well. So ignore that, we're just looking at the top yoke here. The difference in design primarily, it's the same sort of shape, it's just that again, this is much more angular. It's been machined here, but the sharp edges kept. So if you, again, just remember what that looks like, the sharp edges on the yoke there. Let's compare it with the original Panigale. Here we go, the sharp edges have just been sort of machined off, so you've got a bit of a smoother look. Again, I'm not saying one is better than the other, I'm just saying it's something that actually remains quite similar across the two bikes, but is still subtly different. I can hear a motorcycle outside, just bear with me. Right, I'm back. Sorry about that little interruption, but normal service resumes. Okay, so the next thing, I know I said that this is just going to be about how the bikes look different and I wasn't going into technical arenas, but there is one thing that has an impact on looks and is also a technical thing, and that's to do with the suspension. So here we go. When the bike was first launched, they made great play of the fact that the suspension on the Panigale had this horizontally mounted suspension unit. Here we go, and it looks great, and even on the high spec 1199s and the 1299s, this became an Öhlins unit, but it looks much the same. You know, the engine was a stress member, and the suspension actually connected in that horizontal way, which I think looked really mean. So I was quite surprised when I saw on the new bike that they've completely changed that. Again, of course, it's a new engine, so a new frame, effectively. But on the new one, here we go, it's got the beautiful Öhlins, but this one actually has a vertically mounted suspension unit, which again is something I hadn't noticed until I actually got this bike and started to look at it closely. So just another little interesting anoraky feature, I think. Okay, I'm starting to struggle a bit now, but exhaust, completely different exhaust on the V4S. I'm quite glad to see actually, because on the 99, no, what was it, not the 899, the 959, they put that hideous monstrosity of an exhaust that sort of went up and vertically. Well, they've gone back for an underslung exhaust, I'm glad to say, on the V4, but it is quite a big old affair, so it's completely different looking to the original exhaust, which I'll show you now. Okay, so this is what the original exhaust looked like. This, I've got the Terminioni titanium system on here. So this was an expensive not aftermarket part. Well, it is an aftermarket part, but it's a Ducati part as well. Well, it's a Terminioni, you know what I'm saying. Anyway, by the way, whatever happened with Ducati and Terminioni? I thought that Terminioni and Ducati went together like bread and cheese, but it seems that these days it's Akrapovics that you get on Ducatis. I don't know, maybe somebody can answer that for me. But anyway, this is the original exhaust. Looks so much better than the one that went on the 959. And I think, okay, it needs a bit of a clean, but I think this possibly looks better than the one on the current bike. The current one, no doubt, having to comply with all sorts of new emission standards and hence much more gubbins underneath to clean what's coming out of the bike. But again, just another thing that I thought looked a bit better on the original bike. Okay, another thing that struck me quite early on that's quite different about the new bike versus the old is that down at the back end again. So have a look at the seat here. This is the new bike, the V4. It's got these big old gaps here and this little bit here. Okay, just remember what that looks like, and I'll take you over to the original bike now. Okay, here's the end of the original bike, and I have to say I think that the original bike is a bit more neater. This just looks a bit more classic to me, whereas the new V4 is maybe a little bit too fussy. So again, just remember what that looks like. We'll have a quick look at the V4 again. See what I mean? I think just these bits where you can see inside here just doesn't look quite as classy as on the original bike. So there we go. I told you it was going to be a bit of an anoraky video. That's pretty much it for just aesthetically how the bikes have kind of evolved over the last 4 years since the Panigale has been around now. Either way, I still think both bikes are absolutely beautiful to look at. They're both also absolutely beautiful to ride, but more on that another time. I can't say which one I prefer the looks of most. If you have a look at this picture I took of both of them on the driveway, I still, you know, of course the new bike is a much higher spec, lovelier bike, but in terms of whether it looks better, I'm not too sure. The jury's out. I'm not saying I don't like the looks of it. I'm just not saying it's necessarily better than the original bike, but it'd be interesting to see what your thoughts on that were. Okay, there we go. It's an absolutely filthy day outside today, so I just thought I'd come in the garage and do that video. Hope it's been of some interest. I told you it was anoraky. Normal service resumed next time. If this is the first time you have seen one of my videos, by the way, I don't just do stuff in the garage, but I do trips and tours. I do bike reviews, I do bike news, I do the odd live stream, all sorts of stuff to do with motorcycling. And if you stuck around to watch this video, then thank you very much for watching. It'd be great to have you along for another one, so do hit that subscribe button if you can. Alrighty, that's it for now. I've got loads more videos to come on the big V4 Panigale, so if you're interested in the bike, stay tuned to the channel, including I'm going to be doing my in-depth review of what the bike is like to live with on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, if you like the Panigale, you're going to want to watch that video. Alright, that's it for this time. Look forward to speaking to you again soon. Until then, this has been the Missing Them Fly. Cheerio.